All right, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I think this is the 10th episode. And today I have Nate Hillyer with me, who is one of my old art mentors. Really cool guy. Tell us about what do you do, Nate?
I like to draw. Yeah. I do a lot of work in, I guess, the dark art scene. Been around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I like to work with bands, and I like to work with pretty much anybody in the comics or film industry. But for the most part, I focus on my own stuff, my own personal projects, trying to get those things off the ground. So that's my primary focus.
Yeah, man. I remember when I came across your work originally, and like, I think both of us really we hit it off the first time me and you talked because your stuff is so super detailed with the pen and ink work, which is the stuff that I love. Like,
Mhm.
I know some of the artists that you liked. Like, who were some of the artists that you grew up like? Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah, Bernie Wrightson was a huge inspiration for me. Growing up, I really liked Mike Mignola, his work,
Yeah.
pretty inspiring as well. Classic illustrators like Arthur Rackham, um, super influential there at the start. I kind of started off with pencil for the most part, and then I moved into ink. I just like the contrast a lot, and I do color here and there. I like color, but I think my main passion is black and white. So a lot of comics inkers when I was growing up. I was a big comic guy when I was little, when I was a kid. I
Mhm.
got away from that after a while. So when I was growing up, I loved Marvel and DC, and I had action figures, and I would be drawing those and doing Pokemon and that kind of stuff. And then as I got older, I started getting into independent comics, and uh, I guess there was more freedom there in some
Mhm.
ways that I was seeing. And my goal for the longest time growing up was I wanted to be an animator. I loved cartoons, and I liked the way that people could express themselves through independent comics. And so that was my goal for the longest time. And then really seeing Mike do Hellboy and seeing these people start, venturing off, and they wanted to leave the industry and they wanted to go do their own things. I was like, well, why don't I just start there with my career? It's a harder path, right? You don't have the establishment there for yourself, but it's always been my goal is, well, why not just try to make that my career, an independent artist rather than trying to work my way through the system first.
Mhm. Yeah, the system is interesting. Like, I guess I'm like in my second year of doing freelance and like my first year of like doing it kind of full time, where it's a mixture. Like, it's been built off of the back of me doing my own work that I've been able to
Mm,
get commissions that are paying me at least decently. But it's a whole nother beast. Like, both sides of it, like you can do your own thing and sell your own thing, but it takes such a long time to build an audience around it. And then on the other side, there's always like a company or somebody that's trying to take advantage of you in some way.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So what is the realities of being like an independent artist doing what you're doing now? Because you're making your full time living just doing your own stuff and selling prints and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I had been for a while. I've pivoted a little bit with the pandemic and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Trying I just rethought a lot of my business model, and so I've gone back to the drawing board. But yeah, for a long time there, I was focusing on prints and trying to create products. No, let's
Hmm.
not do that. Products and focus heavily on trying to create story and that kind of stuff. And through the pandemic, I saw what I was doing, and a lot of it was centered around trying to make new art, because I had bills, trying to make new art to pay the bills. And I decided that's not really what I want to do. I just want to be able to make the art I want to make. And so it's been a long time trying to figure out how I can do that. Uh, how can I still create work that I want to make, but still provide a product or, something that people can enjoy. That's a result of the work. And so I thought about Patreon for a while, and I thought about uh, doing more conventions. And then I realized that what I really want to be doing is creating a story through my website and try to centralize all of these thoughts that I have and to build up more of a community than anything. Oh my goodness, Mazzy. She hears people talking and she wants to say hi. And she's playing around on there.
That's the worst of the podcast. So what is your so you're creating stories through your website. I'm looking at your website right now. How do you how do you pronounce it? Nox Losum? Is that how you pronounce your
Nox Losum?
Okay. And that was about a world it's plunged into complete darkness, right? And then like people were trying to figure out how to live in this world.
It's taken a little bit of a turn. So this is a project I've worked on for a few years now, and at the start it was a little more, I get it was centered around the idea of light being taken from a world, but it's become a little more complicated than that now, which is really fun. I'm the kind of person where I like to get things really figured out before I release a lot of content, and so on the website you'll see a tab that just says Nox Losum, and eventually that will be a portal that will take you to all of this content. The goal then is to have a membership that you can, like a Patreon, support the work with, but most of the content for Nox Losum will be free to enjoy and sift through and that kind of stuff. Been trying to push more into the digital realm, not digital illustration, but just providing digital content, to try to cut back on the consumerism and to try to prevent waste and that kind of stuff, and really think about my role and my footprint and how much, because I've been creating there's a lot of waste created when you create a print and you ship a print and things get thrown away, and I just didn't feel great about that, and I've been trying to figure out how to do it more responsibly, whether that's through more environmentally friendly packaging or limiting the amount of things that I do ship. So for a while there, I wasn't selling any prints. And then eventually I decided to open up an in-print shop because they have a more efficient means of production, since they have an established print center. So that's sort of the middle area for me. I think the goal eventually might be to do some digital type prints, and to maybe even move away from prints into more so original art and digital fulfillment of certain goods, say like digital books, digital sketchbooks, and that kind of stuff, I think is the future for me.
Okay. So so Nox Losum is a comic, or it's going to be more of like an illustrated novel?
It's going to be somewhere in the middle. It gets a little hard to explain. I would call it a multimedia project. There's going to be writing, there's going to be illustrations, there will be some sequential work. It's kind of hard to explain until it's up, but essentially it's a story that can be enjoyed in a multifaceted way.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty coal, man. That is really cool. And
Thanks.
It's really interesting to have like watched you evolve as an artist, because your style still has that influence of like Baum and like Bernie and all these other guys it is that we both grew up loving. But like the more and more it is that I've seen you go along, you just have such a clearer vision of who it is that you are as an artist, and it's really dope, man. I love the work, especially the one that I'm going to use for the thumbnail of this is the Western Meadow. That is such a dope painting, dude. I love that painting.
Thanks. I've been really wanting to get back into painting, and I struggle with attention, and so for me, a lot of the issues with project-based stuff is that it takes a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And so I tend to wander off these paths. And part of that is sometimes I just want to make paintings. And so I'll go and make, those 4 paintings in a month. And then I'll stop painting for 2 or 3 months until I feel like painting again. And it just helps me to experiment, for one, but it also helps me to be comfortable with different mediums and not to get too comfortable with just doing the same thing, just doing ink drawings over and over. So right now I'm in an ink phase for sure. And I get really I just love ink. But I'll probably go back and do some more full color paintings here soon. And I don't like to be tied down, and I think that's part of just me trying to be a better artist. I'm never really content with where I am.
Do you ever see yourself doing anything like 3D or anything like that, or any kind of sculpting?
If the space would allow for it, I took some classes when I was in school for 3D. It's tough. 3D is very hard, like physical 3D. If I did anything, it would probably be like miniature clay sculpture. Like that can be fairly detailed without it taking a long time to do one sculpture. But I'm also interested in 3D printing. I've been talking to some friends and some people about maybe doing some like 3D miniatures for tabletop and that kind of stuff. So maybe that's something that's part of my future. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be pretty dope. So there was like a couple of things when I was going through your social media earlier that I wanted to ask you about.
Hmm.
Uh, One of them specifically is how do you how do you keep yourself going as far as being an independent artist? I'm assuming you take on a pretty good amount of commissions as well as you're doing your own personal work, right? Like how do you set up your workflow?
It's chaotic. I mean, each day is different, which is nice. I think the biggest part that some people struggle with is the motivation. Um, and for me, the motivation always comes after I start work. I mean, there's days I don't want to do work. There's days I don't want to get in here. I mean, I've got a house that's bothering me, and I've got health stuff, and it can be distracting for sure. And so you have to just sit yourself down and not give yourself distraction. I think somebody said that distraction is the killer of creativity, and I really do believe that. So keeping your phone at a out of your arm's reach, if that's going to keep you distracted from working, and just honing in and hyper focusing on what you're working on. And if you can't work in silence, you don't have to. I listen to podcasts a lot, or I listen to music, and that really tends to help me. I don't love silence, but then sometimes I find myself, I'm like, oh, I've been sitting here for 2 hours and drawing. And usually that just accompanies a flow state. So if you can get yourself in the flow state, you're going to start pumping out some cool work. And not everything that we do as artists we're going to love, but I think everything that we do is a building block. So I try to keep all my sketches, and I go back and I look through them. 2 years later, go back and look in a sketchbook and say, how can I be inspired by myself in the past? How can I reinvent these ideas or utilize them? Or maybe I was ahead of my time in some way, and an idea I had in the past is a lot more interesting now, or it's something that I can accomplish now. That's because I've grown in my technique or as an artist. But yeah.
So do you feel like I mean, I guess this is kind of an obvious answer to this, but anybody who commissions you or comes to you for any kind of work, they've more than likely found you through social media. They've more than likely found you through Instagram.
Yeah,
Okay.
more than likely. Yeah,
Yeah.
social media is. I mean, I don't love it. I wish I didn't have to use it. It's definitely a double-edged sword. It's something we have to use as artists, but I wish I could get away from it. That's my goal. My goal is to, my website is what I want my hub to be. I don't want my hub to be social media. I don't like the fact that I'm relying on a company to control an algorithm that dictates whether I'm going to make money this month. So that's really been my goal this whole time since the pandemic started. I said, holy cow, I'm very reliant on social media. I need to get away from this. And so I started really thinking about how I can create a membership option on my site. How can I engage community through my direct site with email and newsletters? How can I provide content that people would enjoy and keep it low cost? Because I'm a big believer in affordability. I don't want it to be inaccessible to any category, of budget. So man, social media is, that's where primarily I do receive work, people, personal commissions and that kind of thing. That's my favorite are personal commissions. I like doing, oh, hey, I want you to draw my tattoo, or I have this idea, I've had this vision, or I had this nightmare. That kind of stuff is really fun. Some of the coolest ones are like, I had this near death experience and this is what I saw. Please draw this. Those are the coolest ones. I mean, sometimes it's always the ones that are for commercial use that tend to get a little bit more sticky. And so that, I mean, it's a killer of creativity too, right? You know, you want less restrictions, but you understand that there is a subject that you need to describe with your artwork. And so you walk that fine line, and sometimes you just can't please a client. But for the most part, I haven't had many troubles with clients, but I tend to be selective. And the opportunities that I would find interesting tend to work their way out of the wood. I don't know if it's because I've just focused really hard on the art that I want to make, and so I don't have like Snapple breathing down my neck, which I think is a good thing. And I'm not really looking for like corporate clients as much as I'm looking for those indie publishers that would like to work with me. I consider myself an underground artist still. I really like working with independent publishers, with people that are just one person making an RPG, that kind of stuff. Those are my bread and butter. I love working with people that just have an idea and they're passionate about it, and they like the work, and I just try to provide for that. Hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the stuff that I like too. Like before I started doing any kind of freelance, I kind of had this idea that I'd like to work for some big company. But then when you start working with somebody who's putting together their own tabletop game or their own comic or something, and you get to put your own creativity into it.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the people that work for big companies like EA or something. You don't get to put your 2 cents into it. They tell you.
Mm-hmm.
That is your place in the factory line, and that's all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you, what's going on, Tommy, by the way? Hello, Tommy. That's my buddy there hanging out with us. So I saw you made a recent post about like how social media is kind of getting to the point where they're putting their foot on the shoulder of the creators that built these platforms to begin with.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's kind of crazy because like I kind of stopped messing around with social media like a few months ago once I started to get a lot of freelance work and I wasn't able to really create my own stuff. And then now kind of coming back to it, I'm kind of wondering how much effort it's really worth putting into it. Like, at least the major ones. Like, it seems like maybe people just need to start go ahead and migrating to other platforms. You know what I mean? I don't know if you have any other platforms that interest you or any thoughts on that.
I mean, like I said, website and email. I'm going back to the dawn of the internet. That's what I want. Direct connection. And anymore, social media is trying to get you to pay for ads to reach the people that just want to see your work. And so they just want to be a middleman where they just take, you can just consider it a percentage of any of the money that you could make through them. So, I mean, I would, if it's like, let's say $10 a month and you get a chronological feed and access to anyone who follows your work. And it's like, yeah, it's a no brainer to me. I would pay, if it was a service like that, but they just want to make money off of us without really us having any say in what's going on. So social media, yeah, I don't know if it's dying. I think it's actually growing. Look at TikTok. So for me, it's not a necessity, but it's there if I want to use it as a tool. And when I don't feel like using it, I don't use it. This last winter, I basically had a breakdown. I was like, I'm just so tired of the cycles of creation on social media, and I just deleted everything and unfollowed everybody. And I just said, I need a mental health break, and it helped. I came back, and my engagement plummeted. I've lost probably 20,000 followers, but those people weren't supporting me in the first place. So I'm not trying to be like a hyped artist or anything. I just want to make my art and inspire people. Those are my main goals. I love hearing from people that just say, hey, your work inspires me. I quit drawing and I want to draw again. Like, I love that. So now I've never been in it for the money. Money is a necessary evil, but for me, it's always been about the art making itself. And with social media, it makes it so that you can be in contact with people that you never would have. I mean, when I was first starting out, I said, I just want to sell one drawing. I just want to sell one original piece that's not fan art, that's not something that is a commission, just something that I drew that somebody wants to purchase. And I did that, and I've done that so much now where it's become like I just need to check myself, right? It's like you need to realize that past Nate would be so thrilled about present Nate. And it's easy. I don't know, no matter where you are in life or what we're talking about, it could be art, it could be personal development, it could be relationships, whatever. But I think perspective is very important. And for me, I got that perspective this last winter, and I decided, whoa, I really just need to hone in on what I want, because I can't please everybody. So I should try to just please myself. And the people that are there to support me will be there with me, even if that's on social media or through my site, that kind of thing. But I mean, the percentage of people, let's say I got 175,000 followers, the percentage of people that have actually monetarily supported my work is very small compared to that larger number.
So, what was it that was like the what is it that set you off? Was it just the constant need to feed this machine that is never full? Is that what it was?
That was part of it. Yeah. I felt like I was being pushed into this box, draw horns, do something scary, do this fan art. And I let it feed into the work. And eventually I just felt dissatisfied with where I was. And I said, oh man, this work is cool. I'm selling prints, but I'm not happy. And what I really wanted was, to focus back on the story, which really got me into this in the first place, because I'd lost sight of most of it, because, with life and with growing older and having more responsibility, I have larger bills to pay, and, life is stressful. And so my focus shifted from the creative side to, I need to survive. And I guess I just got to the point where I felt like, well, if I do that my whole life, I'm going to be full of what ifs. And so I just don't want to be full of what ifs. I just want to try. And I like to tell people that the only way to fail is if you quit. So I just don't quit, take breaks. I mean, breaks are really important. Figure out what you really want to do and just be passionate about it. Don't let anyone tell you not to do it or that you should be doing something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the losing touch with what it is that brings you into art seems like such a common problem it is that artists run into, especially if you're doing anything for money. Because like you said, you eventually you get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, I need to be drawing something for somebody. It's now a service for someone. It's not just me and my expression. And I need to service that, otherwise I don't get to pay my bills. And so you start to kind of curtail what it is that you do, to kind of be like, well, this person is successful, so maybe I'll do something like him, or this person is successful, and then it puts you into this. It was something that I've noticed lately is like when I do that, because I look at so many artists like you or whatever, then I'm like, oh, I want to draw like him, but even though there's things it is that we might have in common, I don't necessarily, I have my own way of wanting to do something. And I think when you start thinking like that, and you start thinking about like, oh, this person's super successful, maybe I can do something like them, then that's when you're starting to kind of stray away from whatever it is that brought you there in the first place.
Right. I would agree with that. And I would say success is subjective. And the danger, the pitfall of success is to base your success on money, the amount earned, the popularity, the number you have on social media. I think success is very personal. For me, success is family oriented and it's health oriented, and there's balance. I think balance is very important. Trying to find that balance between having to make money but still doing what you want to do, because art at its basis is free expression, and when you chain yourself to money or the expectation, your creativity is stifled. And I think making comparisons to other artists never goes away. You go all the way up the list. There's still, the artists at the top are still comparing themselves to the other artists. And I think that's fun to know because everyone's so unique in their approach that no path is the same. And so there's no way to replicate that same quote unquote success. And so there's freedom in that thought, knowing that you don't have to do what someone else has done, and that you can forge your own way and do things differently and do something that isn't really being done and still be successful.
So for you, whenever you had this moment where you're like, okay, I can't keep feeding this social media machine and getting stuck in this one corner with everything, um, what did you do to break yourself out of it? You just said, okay, now I'm just going to start using different mediums. I'm going to do something just completely out of context of what it is that I've done before, or you're looking at other artists, or you take like, what did you do?
I unplugged. I completely unplugged. I didn't look at what anyone else was doing. I didn't look at social media. I didn't look at what was going on, and I just started. I guess just started thinking more. And then when I felt ready, I started working in my sketchbook on ideas and telling myself I can do whatever I want. So just go ahead and do it. And part of that was, dealing with a lot of my religious trauma and uh, really getting back to my roots and trying to think about, man, okay, well, if I want to get better in certain areas, what are those areas? And one of those areas was painting. And I want to say, okay, I want to challenge myself. I haven't painted in years, but can I do a painting? And yeah, I feel like it was a pretty good painting. I'm excited to keep painting and get better at it. Um, but yeah, I think for me the goal was not really to like break expectations or to even base my new growth off of what people would expect, and more so just say, well, I'm going to do whatever I want. And then if I feel like sharing it, I will. Because I mean, I did those paintings and I didn't share them for a while, and I still wasn't sharing it. Then eventually I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to dip my toes back in and just say hi to everyone and get back to the community. And so that's what really has been my focus, is trying to get back into the community and less into the grind. So I'm not grinding for social media. I'm just sharing what I'm working on and reframing the thinking again, and telling myself that I'm not creating in order to get likes on social media. I'm not creating in order to sell a product on social media. I'm just creating. And if something happens as a result of that creating, then cool. And so far it's been good. I mean, I just been doing what I want to do, and people have been reaching out, and the money is used to be more like, hey, I've sold a print, selling lots of prints, it's coming in, there's daily money coming in. And now it's more so like, okay, no, there's money on the way. I don't know where it's coming from. And then a project will come in and it's like, okay, whew, I can pay that bill. So it's a little more chaotic. There's a lot more trust in the universe to provide, but I'm happier. I'm happier without having to grind, I guess, and just keep just pumping out new work over and over every day, spending more time, I think. And also just not really thinking about it at all. So I've been posting warm-ups recently, which has been really, really fun. Just doing like 15, 20-minute drawings without any real purpose or, goal, like, even a commission, which has been really nice. So just catching up on doing what I want to do, not just with painting, but with inking and other mediums as well. Been thinking about getting back into comics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's hmm. So as far as when you're talking about community, what how are you approaching the community aspect of it? Because I mean, I guess in a sense you already built a community around your art, and so you're just kind of coming back to a lot of these people, and then you're talking about going through the website specifically. So how did you build this audience around your work to begin with? Was it just creating stuff and then people liking it and then I'm just like getting more into it, or what?
I really can't answer. I don't know how. When I started off, I mean, I had like 400 followers,
Yeah.
and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and part of that was, well, what do I love? And I grew up loving monsters. I grew up loving creature design and horror movies. And I was like, and I grew up loving comics and I like, just the starkness of black and white. And I said, okay, well, let's just figure this thing out. And so I just worked a lot in sketchbooks and tried to figure out my quote unquote style. But really, all it is, I mean, style is just a shorthand, right? It's not forced, in my opinion. It's just the way that you draw. Um, and so the longer you do that, the more your style is going to be more cemented. And and when it comes to no, not right now. When it comes to the actual, oh man, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
The building an audience.
Yeah, building an audience. Yeah, I don't know how it came about necessarily, but I just started to think about those things I was talking about. And eventually they built upon each other to the point where I said, okay, well, I'm going to be vulnerable. And I started sharing my poetry. This was back when, I mean, I started Instagram. I mean, for the most part, the dark art community was doing very different things than they are now. I would say the dark art community has grown and expanded since even I joined. It's really gotten a lot more full, which is really exciting. I think it's become a lot more accepted. I come from a Christian background, and so a lot of my, a lot of the people in my family and my real life community thought what I was doing was sinful. But I just kept persevering and saying, I don't know. Like I talked with a lot of counselors, art counselor people that I trusted, and there was no market really for what I was doing. And I just said, I'm going to try to make one. Just try to do what I want to do, and hopefully it sells. And if it doesn't, I just keep grinding and figure it out. So I think the breakthrough for me happened when I started sharing my writing alongside of my work to give a little bit of an indicator of where my thoughts were on a specific piece. And things started to snowball from there. I don't know why. I mean, I would literally, I could just watch the numbers go up day by day. It confused me too. I mean, it was exciting, but it's like, oh man, I don't know. Like, I was just a small artist. I didn't know like what was going on necessarily. I was just trying to make art, and it's like, oh man, this could be a living, because I was working a day job and just making art. So I was working basically doubles. I would work in the mornings and early afternoons on art, and then I'd go work my day job second shift, and then come home, maybe do more art, and then wake up and do it all again. And so I did that for several years until I felt confident enough that I could try to do it full time. So I have no real explanation of why things popped off the way they did. So there's really no advice I can give other than, I guess, consistency. So to be there when you're trying to grow, be really consistent. Not to say that you have to do that grinding on social media, but to be consistent with your audience, which means to meet their expectations of delivery. So if they're used to, you posting 2 times a week or even 3 times a week. And then if you're going to take a break, communicate that break. Or when you come back, just communicate what's going on. I think people are very understanding of schedules, and they realize that artists are people. And so the more that you let them in and you're vulnerable with who you are as a person, the more they understand your work and the more that they are there to support it, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So do you, I think I'm getting a little bit of feedback from you. Yeah, I can hear my voice. Still? No? Maybe not? Okay. I feel good now. Something else I was okay, so do you think that the reason why it is that your stuff took off is because it was kind of a right place, right time as far as like the algorithm with Instagram? Because it did, like, do you think that, or do you see other artists that are starting now that get the same sort of traction ever since they've started to try to put the heel on it and make you pay for ads and that sort of thing?
I mean, I don't think it was a byproduct of the time. I've seen, I've known people who started off like that are larger than I am now, that weren't there when I started. I'm thinking of people like Michael Ulrich. Um, uh, when I started, I don't even think he had an Instagram, and he's just blown up. It's amazing, really. Um, I look at people like Richard Willie on Instagram. He's got some really fantastic work. But I still remember when he reached out to me, and I think he was doing photography of Star Wars uh, figures and stuff like that, and he was curious about art making. And so Albinist design as well. There's people that have come up that I've watched grow, and that's really exciting to see. And so I think it's still possible. I think it's really possible to gain traction on social media. I think it's still possible to quote unquote blow up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, as far as how easy it is, I know that some people run ads because I talk to people on Instagram. Do you run ads? Do you not run ads? Like, what are your strategies? There's engagement groups now, which weren't a thing back in the day. Uh, but I think for the most part, you find that the work is what carries the traction. So as soon as the work starts to get better, you start to see people really start taking off, especially if you have a group, a community like the dark art community. I mean, I'm always trying to share new artists on my Instagram and stories because when I was starting out, I would have loved that. Like I would have loved a boost, like a little bit of a boost. And so I try my hardest to boost creators who really deserve to be, their work is so great. And it's like they're sitting at like 200 followers. It's like how is this person not, have more exposure? And so I think a lot of it's a crapshoot for sure. It's a crapshoot, but there's a human element to it. And so if we can support each other and lift each other up at the same time, I think that everyone will find more success.
So you said that your Christian background, a lot of people look at you as like sinful, uh, crazy, however it is that you want to say it. What is your opinion about what it is that you do? Why do you think that you're attracted to the dark arts?
For me, it's about the light and the darkness.
Hmm.
Um, my work has never been about reveling in blood and death, um, or gore or violence. My work's always been more about exploring those unknown moments between life and death. The supernatural and mythology, the folklore, the weird liminal spaces, uh, and then rooting that in history. And I really love medieval aesthetic, I guess, but uh, as a vehicle to carry those thoughts. But for me, it's always been about existential thought, and less about death as a subject, right? It's been about thinking about death rather than illustrating the concept of death, as far as people with their heads cut off and people puking blood, and so it rides that line of macabre and beautiful. And for me, it's these dualities that exist, life and death, light and dark, beauty and horror, that I've always been attracted to, and trying to blend those edges and say, okay, well, let's turn those things on their head.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well,
Thanks.
if you want to go ahead and you want to plug your stuff, I think we can probably wrap it up there. I know you want to grab something to eat here in a minute.
Okay.
So
Yeah, sure.
go right ahead.
Cool. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Nate Hillyer. I'm also on TikTok now. So over there, I'm at Noxlum, which is Noxlucem. Someone stole Nate Hillyer. Um, I'm on Twitter as well at Nate Hillyer. I'm trying to use more diverse social media platforms as part of the new goal, but I'll always push my website first and foremost, natehillier.com or noxlucem.com. You can get there both ways. Sign up for the mailing list. I don't email very often, but lots more updates there. Happy to have you. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. I try to get back to every message.
Sweet. And my name is Wesley Edwards. You can check my work out at wesleyedwardsart.com or at Wesley Edwards Art on Instagram and Twitter. So thanks for everybody that's watching. Looks like Tommy does want to get the Western Meadow print from you. So we're gonna
Okay.
have to make one for him because he's my buddy.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna surprise him and put it up on his wall for
All right.
him. But thanks for everybody who checks this out. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.